How does MCP compare to other standardized protocols that you've seen? And what role do you see it playing in the future of database technologies like Postgres?
I don't think that I can give you a very good answer to this question. There are people who are like way more into APIs, how they work. I think like initial feedback or responses are, I don't really understand that well exactly how it works. I mean, it feels sort of flexible enough in the sense that, you define, and that's also something that was interesting. Like I put together that MCP demo, which was creating and deleting services. And it's an MCP server for TimescaleDB or for Timescale Cloud that allows you to do like 3 actions, like list the services that you have on Timescale Cloud, create a new service, or delete services. Or delete a service. And so you could use that from Claude to basically tell it like, you tell Claude, tell me what services I have on Timescale Cloud. And Claude then like makes the tool call, gets all the list of services, says like, these are the service names, and then their service IDs, which is like an important thing for being able to delete and so on. You need the service ID. So, and the interesting thing there is like, I wanted to explore this more, but I haven't yet. But I kind of defined the object that you need to create a service in a very simple way, because service creation takes a lot of parameters. It's like you can choose CPU memory, the region, you give it a name. There's a bunch of other things. You can set like VPC configurations and so on and so forth. But I set it up so that it had an optional parameter, that's the region, and that it needed to have a name, which is a string. And the first time that I tried it out, I said I wanted to create a service, and it was like, oh, what do you want the name of the service to be? And I was like, okay, well, I want to call it, I don't know, James's test service. And then the next time I ran it, I was like, I want you to create a service, and it was just like, created one for me. And I was like, why didn't you ask me what I want the service to be called? And so there was also something there that kind of like coming to answer your question. Like I did define like the structure of the object that I expected to receive, and I did like express that these fields are optional, these fields are mandatory, but it didn't feel like I had any control over what the LLM actually did. It makes sense that it would be a feature that you can tell it like, you have to get all of the non-optional fields, and you have to tell the user about these fields that they want or whatever. I think the whole MCP thing, it's really interesting, but it's just unclear whether it's going to be like actually a thing or not a thing. Although I almost feel like I can't see how it won't be a thing, but something needs to broader adoption. I think there's quite a few hurdles.
Let me address the first one. How does it compare? To be honest, I don't care. As long as there is a standard which everyone follows, which is developed in terms of tools around it, test cases around that, and so on, I don't care what the payload, what the transport is. As long as like everybody agrees that that's what we're doing. And like just a few months ago, like Anthropic would do their own thing, I would do their own thing, and so on. Like now, we finally came to the situation where there's one standard and all the tools get adapted to this standard, which is great. As far as doing things with Postgres, personally, I expect it to again give me a lot of shortcuts, if you will. So the things that now I have to manually assemble, like complex joins of few system views to like analyze your continuous aggregates. Like I would just ask the tool to do that for me. I look under the covers, what's going on. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's continue.
Well, I like that it's just JSON RPC too. I mean, you're just sending JSON objects. It's simple. I don't think it needs to be any more complicated than that. I like that a lot. And then, like the protocol can be standard IO, it can be HTTP with server-side events. I see they've got like new streaming HTTP one. I think the spec has been merged. So I like the simplicity of that. I was never a fan of SOAP. I don't even really like REST. I don't know, maybe part of it is me being so preferable to databases where you're very like function oriented. I like remote procedures. Call a function over there with these arguments and give me the results. So I like that. MCP server with databases. I haven't really thought about that. So I guess to start with, when I'm in development mode and I have a local development database, cool with YOLO, just let it do whatever it's going to do and it screws things up. But I actually think in some ways, MCP servers with databases are starting off from a better place than maybe general purpose, because we do have in Postgres and in other relational databases a very strong access control system. So you do, when the MCP server connects, when the LLM connects to your database, it's in the context of a database session, in the context of a database user. And that user can be locked down with all of the access privileges and rule systems that are built into the system and are tried and true and bulletproof. And you can use row level security to make sure, yes, it has read-write access to this table, but it should only be able to muck with these rows in the table that belong to it. So I think we're in a better place than maybe some other technologies you might want to have an agent interact with. You can write functions that do the update and then give it access to the function. So you may not want it to have access to touch the entire row. You may want it only be able to touch this column. I think there's even a way to just give it column level privileges too. Yeah, so you can write views that hide things. You can write functions that give it smaller scope, write access, and write SQL functions. So that would do that. So there are a lot of tools in the toolbox in relational land for accommodating this. Now, it may be easy to do the wrong thing and to overlook something. And you may need a more experienced database engineer or DBA to get it all right, but it is doable. It may not be doable in like Redis, may not be in access control. I don't know about Redis or Mongo or whatever. It may not be those primitives available in other places. And we've also got things where you can set transaction timeouts and statement timeouts. So if it tries to fire off a query that would take 17 hours to complete, bail in a second because of the timeouts you've set. And application side, you could do things like, it's generated a query, I want to run an explain plan against it, check the cost and the number of rows coming back first before I say, yeah, run it. If it says it's retrieving 10 billion rows, all right, no, try again. I think it does get another level of complex when you have a multi-tenant database and you want, and you're exposing like a chatbot to your end customers, because like depending on your schema, this guy should only be able to access these rows and woman can only access those rows. I think let's see, the easy case would be like if you had a separate database user for every tenant, because then you can lock down using database primitives. But let's say you've got one database user for your chatbot and multiple tenants use that chatbot. Like a lot of those primitives aren't available in the same way. You have to resort to like other tricks that we need to figure out.